These are the recovered audio files from the investigation of the Hawkshead disappearances. Paul Sweeney, a local police officer who lived on the outskirts of town, was sent on a surveillance mission and never returned. The only evidence of the murders was recorded by him on these tapes. This case has been cold for 10 years, but after these tapes from 1982 showed up, we were assigned to this case.
We will include the recovered tapes in our files for the sake of record keeping. Alright, this is Officer Sweeney reporting. It's day one of my assignment investigating the recent missing persons reports in Hawkshead Village, England. I'm currently located at 12 Aldred Street in my car outside the abandoned warehouse at the fringes of town. It's 4:37 p.m, 23rd of October, 1982. It's pretty cold here. A few days ago, we were informed about a sixth person who's disappeared without a trace, named Fiona Hudson. This can't be a coincidence. I'm thinking I might start talking to the families, see if I can find any connections that might be there. Officer Sweeney, out. So, Mr. and Mrs. Hudson, would you be willing to answer a few questions about your daughter Fiona?
Of course, anything to help us find our baby.
I have reason to believe that the disappearance of Fiona may have been part of a much larger crime. Would there be anyone with a motivation?
No, our Fiona was such a lovely darling. She didn't deserve this, officer. Everyone loved her. She was an angel.
Last Thursday, she never came home from high school, but we weren't allowed to file a report until she had been missing for 24 hours. So she was killed 2 days ago?
Killed? Who said anything about killed? She's only been missing for 3 days. Why would you say that?
My apologies. I jumped to conclusions. I think you should leave now, officer. Of course. Thank you for your time. Hello, Mr. Wright. Would you be able to answer a few questions about what happened before the disappearance of your son, Edward?
Not much to tell. Dropped him off to school like normal. The brat never came home. That's all I'm going to tell you. I shall not speak without my lawyer present.
Well, that didn't go well. Log end. Officer Sweeney, out. Hello. I assume you're Bella Williams?
Yes. Come in. The audio was unable to be recovered from the fourth log. We have no idea what happened during Officer Sweeney's visit to the Williams family.
The disc had the worst weather damage. I suppose we should be fortunate to only have one broken disc. Officer Sweeney here. Currently at the station. It's 2:43 p.m, December 20th. I cannot seem to draw any connections between the victims. Mr. and Mrs. Hudson didn't seem to think of any reason Fiona was murdered. James Wright and Henry Williams are my current suspects. I believe domestic abuse of various degrees in both households. More so for the Williams family. I'll get you, Henry. This case is only getting more complicated as time passes. I need more clues to go off on, or more people are going to die. Officer Sweeney, out. What are you doing here?
You won't get away with this, you piece of shit.
Think this through, Henry. I'm a police officer. They'll come after you.
From the 6 logs recovered, we now know that the disappearance of Sweeney was no accident. It was purposeful. Officer Sweeney was murdered.
There was only so much we could learn from these tapes, so Irene Moore and I made a decision to go to the scene of the crimes, Hawkshead Village.
We spent about 3 weeks chasing dead ends, until we stumbled upon a lead. Our lead was an odd one, Mrs. Williams. Talking to Mrs. Williams uncovered a lot of holes in the case, especially her husband's involvement, as his name was heard on the last tape.
What we know about Henry Williams was that Officer Sweeney suspected him. His name was mentioned in the tape of Officer Sweeney's death, and that he's been missing since that day.
Mrs. Williams told us that Henry was going to Paul Sweeney's house to set things right, and that he would return soon, but he never came back. Paul Sweeney's house was a historical site. It didn't look like it had been touched since his death. Overgrown weeds, peeling wallpaper, sagging roof. The house was in shambles.
The backyard was an interesting place, though. Gave you a heavy feeling in the chest. Felt like someone was watching us.
We found bones in the backyard. We thought it was animal bones at first, but then we found a tibia bone from the leg, and we just instantly knew that it was human. A team came in and collected the bones in the backyard to be sent for a DNA analysis. The results of the DNA test came back a month later. 1,308 bones were tested, 9 victims altogether, with DNA matches to the 7 missing kids and Henry Williams.
What was odd that there was no trace of poor Sweeney. Irene Moore and I got to talking. With Henry dead, we had no new leads and a gut feeling that maybe it was the very man we had been following.
Maybe there was a reason that Paul Sweeney never ended up finding any information about the missing people.
Maybe he was purposely throwing the police off the scent.
From his record, Paul was your model police officer. Friendly with the community, perfect record, and a commitment to his job. This was shown when he volunteered to investigate the missing kids.
In hindsight, this might have been why he was so determined to be the primary officer on the case.
Paul Sweeney had just developed from the victim to our number 1 suspect.
We combed his old house for anything that we could have missed.
And lo and behold, he had a stash of cassette tapes under a floorboard.
On each tape, he recorded and then described his murders in gruesome detail. We won't be playing them, but they'll be attached to this investigation file. Unfortunately, at the time of this recording, we still don't know where he is or if he will have more victims. Until he is found, we will not rest.
On December 11th, Isabel Scott was pronounced missing.